Get ready to level up your Blades in the Dark game. We're diving into advanced gameplay techniques to enhance your experience. From fiction-first gaming to supernatural elements, we'll explore important aspects of playing at high levels. Join us as we discuss Doskvol's history and cultures, advanced abilities, and more. So grab your dice and let's dive in.
Hello and welcome, heroes, to Crit Academy Dyson Dialogue. I am your host, Justin.
I'm your co-host, Ian.
I'm your co-host, Alex.
I'm your co-host, Brandon.
We are really excited to bring you the third and final episode of Blades in the Dark miniseries. If you're just following in and tuning in for the first time, there's plenty of Game Master tips for you to enjoy here, or feel free to head back to our earlier episodes and read them in order. Or listen to them in order. You're not reading anything. That would be weird.
Do not read this podcast and drive.
I am very excited to dive into the mechanisms of being a dungeon, because this is what I was saving it for.
Yep.
Of just being a dungeon master and like kind of given what it feels like to sit in the front seat of the car.
So if you've run other role-playing games before, or you might find that running this game is a bit different.
Yeah.
Mainly in the distribution of authority in the game. In the way players have a lot of control over the how the rules are applied, especially, which is unique. But we're going to talk about the details of what's the GM's job and what are some of the focal points that sets Blades in the Dark apart. But I want you to note that as we're discussing these, keep other RPGs in mind as well, because many of them still apply, and I think can make for a better experience, right?
Yep.
So while we got a lot to cover here, we're going to have a nice roundtable discussion, and I specifically want to touch on a little bit more of the lore and details of the world it's setting itself as we go forward. So first thing I want to point out is a super big takeaway from the book is, as a GM, play and find out method. Play and find out. What does that mean to each of you?
Play it till you figure out how it works.
Okay.
It's like, oh, look, we've been doing this mechanic wrong this whole time. Well, let's fix it up. All right.
Wing it as you go along.
Wing it as you go along. Alex?
To me, play and find out kind of symbolizes the idea that the play comes first, not the DM. It's player driven. It's not DM driven.
Yes. So something that happens when you play other RPGs typically is you have a tendency. There's already here's the kind of story. Here's the beats. Here's the climax. Here's the end. And I think in most RPGs we term it the difference between sandbox and railroad, right? And what it means to play and find out what happens means to do your best as GM to avoid steering the game towards a certain outcome or event at all. It wants you to not do that. It wants you as the game master to leave that 100% in the player's hands. It's your job to poke and prod and prompt them to make decisions, but not to determine what the decision they make is.
It's the one time you want to fuck around and find out.
Yeah, no, for real though. Like, I would definitely say from sitting in the driver's seat, this is like anti-railroad. Like, if you hate railroad, this is anti-railroad.
Yeah. You as game master, you're not supposed to be in charge.
Yep.
You're just facilitating their actions, and that's pretty much it.
And in many cases, the dice definitely on the player side influences what happens, or doesn't happen, I should say. Let me rephrase. It influences whether you succeed or not, and then the GM just choose what happens, but those tell the story as much as anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, that's a big takeaway. No matter what RPG you're playing, we tend to get kind of tunnel vision sometimes.
Yeah.
And so we can take this away into our other games and make sure that we're reminding ourselves that the players are in charge of the storytelling, not so much of the game master. My wife just pointed out it's a lot like bumper cars There's really no control. You just watch everyone smash into each other and see where it goes,
We got
which is a very
That is, yeah.
accurate
Mhm.
analogy. I like that. So beyond that, something that the book really encourages is the conveying of the fictional world in an honest manner. Now, I want to tell you what I first thought of this before I listened to it or went through it, but I'd like to hear what you guys say, because what I thought it was is different than what this says, but I think what it has is better. I guess that's the point. So when I say convey the fiction world honestly, what do you think that means to you? Brandon, why don't you go first?
Convey the fictional world honestly?
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Alex?
So whenever I think of that, the first thing that I think of is that this is a dark game. It is
Yes.
it is not necessarily a bright, happy, fun, joy game. It's an everything sucks game, and the world is kind of an apocalypse, and everything's run by Leviathan blood, and it's creepy. So
Oh.
my thought is
Okay.
like, go for the throat.
That's good.
I
like
gotta
that.
take it as just like, for example, using D&D is about a lot of old settings that are
Mhm.
not being brought back because a lot of the current designers feel like they'd be tiptoeing a lot of issues that they feel that some people in the audience won't agree with, so they're not touching it. Whereas this setting contains all of those things, so it's a very much more darker world. So to me, it's just being upfront and saying this is the kind of world that this game takes place in. This is the kind of world I expect you to interact with. This is not. If you're gonna try to play it this way, you're not going to succeed.
I totally get that. And that needs to be established with your crew at the beginning.
Yep.
Because it's not the fantasy world that we're used to or what other
Yeah.
RPGs are. It's designed to be dark. It's designed to be gritty, and bad, sketchy shit happens.
That's what you mean by
Right.
it. Play,
So-
play and be honest with yourself. You're not gonna be able to go down the street on a stroll just to go on a walk. You're probably gonna get stabbed if you do.
Yes, or you might see the characters might see something that's not good, right? And
Or-
so they should be ready to expect that.
Or the downtrodden.
Actually,
I'm not picturing like a downtrodden orphan who seems to be shambling along, and you basically go, "Here, kid, here's some money to help you out," only for the orphan's like shank you.
Take the rest of it.
Actually,
Because he's-
also
because-
kind of in that same vein, I see very much this idea of like, if your vice is there,
Yeah.
don't ignore your vice. Like you like play honestly to your character. Like your character's a scumbag, so like play honestly to the fact that your character is an alcoholic, and if there is alcohol available, they are going to drink. Even though it's on the job, they are going to drink, and it is going to affect them. And even though it's not very positive reinforcement for you, like that's kind of what I see as well.
I think Justin did a very good job of that in the macro, if you will. Or I did a very good
I
job of that
actually
in the
think
micro.
you did a very good job of that. I was gonna
Yeah.
say you're the one that makes me think of that, because there
Right.
was alcohol there, and to be honest, it was not the smartest idea for you to get drunk at that very
Yeah.
point, but you stayed true to your character.
Which is why I said I think I did a better job of it in the micro.
Let's
Oh, okay,
let's
yeah.
go back to where
Yeah.
somebody was complimenting Justin.
Yeah.
I was only half paying attention. Want to
Yeah.
hear that again?
The fuck?
No. Okay.
We liked Sly.
Oh, not me. Got it. Okay.
You are Sly.
That's
Yeah,
true.
I
Yeah,
don't
You
know
mean
what
he
that
wishes
idea.
he was
Yeah,
sly.
With
right.
the vices. You turn a corner and you see some kid with the 3 cups in the ball, and you're like, "Oh shit!" And you just get your money out, and he swindles you the entire time.
Yep.
So in the Blades in the Dark book, it says, convey the fictional world honestly.
Yep.
Don't play favorites with scenes. Set the scene as it's honestly likely to be.
Yep.
Make the world seem real and not contrived, which is pretty much exactly what Ian came to.
Which is actually one more reason why when that's a snooty executive of the security guard company were giving me crap, why my character went, "Excuse me? What'd you just call me?"
It makes me think of Sin City.
I've not seen it.
It's
That's the
very
first one.
it's very noir-ish,
Very noir.
Okay.
The movie's literally black and white.
and it's in a city that's riddled with crime, and it makes me think of that. That makes sense.
In fact, in most scenes, the only color you ever see is red because it's the color of blood. I'm not joking.
Isn't it black and white, and that's the only thing that's in color?
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So continuing on, and I think this applies to any RPG once again, right? If your characters are adventuring in Forgotten Realms
Mhm.
and you're heading into orc territory, don't be surprised when they're beating the living hell out of somebody
Yep.
as your characters are sneaking past to do something, right?
Or
you should be showing that stuff. You should be revealing that stuff because that might be part of that clan's culture.
Or don't be surprised if you try to show an orc kindness and they respond by X to the face.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is definitely one of the main reasons why Session Zero is so important, because
Yes.
I actually had a group of people who wanted D&D to just be sunshine and rainbows and like no bad stuff, and I brought them to a the fire dwarves, the little fire dwarf dudes. I brought them to
yeah,
one
what
of
are they called?
their caves. And originally, I was going to have starving, like half-dead prisoners, like coming from cages on the top of the cave. And then I remembered that they had all said that they wanted it to be very PG and like whatever. And I was like, ah, shit, they're cages, but they have bones in them. Yeah. And so this is definitely one of those things where it's like, Session Zero is so important,
And
especially in a game like this, because I personally have things myself that I have certain concepts or like things that was brought up during a game, I would have to like leave the game because it's that traumatizing for me. So Session Zero is super important here if that's what they're actually advocating for.
yeah, and that's what they're talking about is in order to get the most out of the game, you can't be holding back what would be expected in this thing. Somebody getting shanked in an alley, a bit of very disgusting actions of what people are doing, beating a homeless man or something just for fun. I mean, I can think of worse things than that, but
I can too.
they want to make sure that if you're going to go this route, go all the way.
Why am I suddenly picturing walking to like a Whisper's lair? And that's only to see people hanging upside from the ceiling in chains that were being bloodletted, so they could use their blood as ingredients in a concoction.
That is exactly this type of shit you should expect.
Yeah.
But that might unsettle some people, so that's why it's important if you're going to go into the game or any game and you're going to convey a fictional world honestly.
Yep.
Make sure everyone's aware of it in advance. All the way or
Yeah.
nothing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you want sunshine and rainbows, I highly can recommend Furhaven. You get to play as little anthropomorphic ninjas. Well, I think the skunk is a ninja, and the squirrel is a paladin, and it's the coolest shit ever. You don't, kill anybody. You knock them unconscious. All that stuff. It's goody.
Dark Sun of the
I will say that Ian kind of has the right of it now that I'm thinking, because I originally tried to watch Peaky Blinders and I just couldn't watch it because of a couple of scenes in particular.
Oh, the horse? I'm
But
guessing?
no, it wasn't the horse. Someone got sexually assaulted and I was like, nope, I'm out.
Yep.
And so, but like, yeah, if you want a good like kind of reference, like just go look at the trigger warnings on Peaky Blinders on that one website, and that's like what you should expect from this.
Yeah, and I think that it's important to note that beyond just running the world as it is, it's our responsibility and your responsibility as game master in any game to truly bring it to life. Now, the Blades in the Dark book actually gives a really good thing of this, talking about giving each location a specific aspect. Is it crowded? Is it cold? Is it wet? Is it dim? Give each important NPC a name and a detail and a preferred method of problem solving, whether it's threats, such as murder and violence. Perhaps they prefer to bargain, charm their way to whatever they need, or make sure to give each action context. So a knife fight is on a rickety wooden stairs. The informant huddles among the wreckage of a statue of a weeping lady, and the lampblack's lair stinks like coal dust. So this falls more in line with all RPG game mastering advice, right? It's by giving one or two distinguishing features it stands out from the last place that the characters visited.
Yes.
So what are your guys' thoughts on that? Maybe some additional tips or tricks that would go with that. Because I use this mentality. So we have, 5 senses, right?
Yep.
So when I'm describing a location, I try to at least touch on 3. Well, vision is almost always a given, right? What do you see? But then what does it smell like? What sounds do you hear? Taste is hard, but you can say, as you lick your lips, you can almost taste the stale air.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And so,
Taste the iron in the air from the blood.
oh yes, that's a good one.
The air tastes dry due to lack of humidity.
Yes. What about you, Brandon?
I already do that.
You don't do that?
I already do that.
Oh, you already do that.
I use 1 to 3 senses when I'm describing things. Like recently, I had players come out of a very super polluted area, and they're now on the coastline of this continent. Like as you guys finally get out of the pollution that you leave behind, a burst of fresh air smashes you in the face, and you can smell the salt from the seas splashing up into your brow. And you're like, oh, I don't know why, but I feel so much better. Yeah.
That's
Just-
awesome.
Just describe a little bit of ocean water.
That's fantastic. That's really good. Not everyone can do that right off the cuff. So if you're going to send the players into an area, make sure you think about that stuff in advance, even if it's 1 or 2 word descriptors, right? Because the words dark and damp alone sets the scene. But if every place you go to is dark and damp, those better not be the same 2 words you're using to describe it.
Yep.
Otherwise, it's going to be, hey, you
Dark and
visited
damp.
another room that's dark
But
and
this
damp.
room is just a little bit more dark and damp than the other one.
What about you, Alex?
My big piece of advice for this whole piece of advice is do not skimp on the smells. I
yeah.
have made like 40-year-old grown men grimace and like do that because it was because specifically I was just talking about like the rancid sweet smell of like spoiled meat and how this whole place has that rancid sweet smell. And I was kind of going into like really excruciating detail. And he just could not handle it. And this guy did not break for anything. And then my other thing is make sure that what you are using is universally understood between all the people at your table. Like, for example, if you have a bunch of men at your table and you tell them that it smells like burnt hair, they don't curl their hair. You don't flat iron your hair. You don't curl your hair. So you might not actually know how disgusting the smell of burnt hair is.
No idea.
So kind of make sure you tailor it towards the specific people playing at your table.
Yep.
If I have like a one girl playing at my table, I'll typically like say something that's like femme people more understand, like burnt hair or something like that.
Right.
I
like that.
But yeah, that's kind of my thing. My big thing is tailor it to the table. Like for example, if you have a bunch of,
it could be you step into the room and it smells like 3-day-old stinky ass crack. They'll know.
yeah, like the ball sack sweat, like, stuff like that. And like for real though, it really brings them into the table and engages them whenever they can specifically relate to that. So like, and yes, before you ask me, I have actually described somebody. It was a fucking gnome that was in the middle of the woods, and they were trying to find him because he's this crazy guy that needs to go back home and stuff. And I told them, they were all men, and I told them he smells like unwashed ball sacks. And they lost their mind, but were also so grossed out.
We're all getting
It
one
works.
over here too.
I'd be like, do you remember that one episode of Seinfeld where Jerry picked up his car and it's like that heavy BO smell from the valet and it didn't go away?
Oh,
Not even at the end of the episode, he tried to get a guy to carjack his car to deal with it anymore. The guy wouldn't even steal it.
Smells like a dodgeball tournament on the 3rd day of a convention.
Yeah, like shit like that. That really, really, that makes them put down their phones, dude. Like that kind of description will make someone put down their phone.
The fuck you just say?
right. So now
It
that
smells like Gen Con on Sunday.
Oh God.
Dude, I had to jump
Any
out.
anime convention too,
I had to jump out of a Friday Night Magic, and I was doing really good.
because it stinks so
I
bad.
was winning. I was like, you know what? I forfeit. It's like, you forfeit. You're about to beat me. He's like, you guys fucking stink. And I left.
Wash yourselves, people. If you go to a convention, if you go anywhere in public, wash yourselves.
You go to Commander Night. Please wash yourself.
God, please.
All right.
Like, no joke, I always actually take aerosol deodorant with me just in case to a convention, just because I know I'll be walking around. I know the stuff I use anyway in the morning is not gonna last all day.
My local game store has deodorant in the bathroom for free,
Dude,
and they will request you to spray it.
I want to get. You ever
Nice.
seen those little? I think this is a good opportunity to have a word from our sponsors. Before I get into that, though, I want you guys seen those old web shooters? They're big, giant. They have the canisters of like the
Yeah.
the spray whiz,
String, sting, or
spray,
whatever,
spray
yeah.
string. Do that, but with deodorant at a convention, just as Spider-Man.
That'd be hilarious.
That would be good.
You look like you could use a little bit of the whip.
Spider-Man.
All right. This episode is brought to you by our generous sponsor, us. Whitaker's Well of Wondrous Items is a wonderful collection of tables that allow you to randomly generate unique magical items on the fly. Forget to prep for the game? No problem. Roll on a couple of these tables and generate unique descriptions, magical effects, and more importantly, what could
Did
be
you
more important
derail?
than that? Give your characters loot to tuck away for the next big boss battle. If this sounds like something that tickles your dice, head on over to critacademy.com to pick up the PDF or get the soft cover and PDF on DriveThruRPG.
Yeah.
Now, back to your show. So, now that we're done talking about sweaty ball sacks and stinky ass
You're welcome.
convention goers,
You're welcome.
let's delve into a few more.
We've yet to really touch on the supernatural aspect of the game.
That's the next. Well, that was actually the previous thing, but I was going to move it to the next
Okay.
talking point. So the one thing that really separates Blades in the Dark setting away from some of the fantasy games I'm used to is it heavily leans into the supernatural aspects. You know, vampires and complex culting rituals and ghosts and ghouls and all these demonic sorts of things. Now, while you can see that stuff in fantasy games, right? It is front and center in Blades in the Dark. So was there any, so we're going through this, outside of the cities being surrounded and powered by these giant barriers that are powered by the blood of these Leviathan demon creatures, it makes for a terrifying setting where going outside is much less of an option than other RPGs. So,
As is running from the mistakes that you made in the city of Doskvol, which is something that Justin pointed out, which I thought was genius that I'd never thought of. Because the cities are surrounded by leviathans in the oceans and ghouls and demons in the wildlands, you can't really run away from your actions. You can't really run away. There's like consequences.
No,
You can't run
that's-
away from those.
yeah.
That's actually probably where that came from. I was when he was developing this. It's like, and one of his friends probably said, "Well, what are you gonna do when they mess up with their action? They just leave the town." It's like, well, I'll think of a reason for them not to leave.
You know, kind of in a similar vein, I think we've all come across some conversation where it's like, how do we make this hard when the players have abilities that lampshade this? Like, how many injuries are, well, not that big of a deal when you have a cleric that says, "I heal you."
That's true.
Because remember when we did a skill challenge, that one assassination attempt I did.
Yeah. And I think that that's a really great point to touch on because when you play this, and I think that's why I like the stress and trauma mechanic better than just the damage, right? Because the assumption there is you're recovering from the regular damage that you would inflict, but it's taking its toll on you mentally and physically.
Yep.
So you're not trying to explain how they're recovering because the stresses and trauma are part of that. But it makes sense that if I get into a knife fight and get stabbed, patch myself up and go have, a beer and drink myself silly, that explain how I kind of recover the next day, maybe. Because I don't remember getting stabbed, and it just dull ache at this point.
Yep.
But I think that's important for the setting overall. Ian, you mentioned you wanted to delve into a little bit of the strange forces and stuff in the world, right?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really come out too much in our game, but as we said earlier, this entire city is surrounded by a electrical barrier that's powered by Leviathan blood.
Well, the one thing that makes it interesting is
Yeah.
that and please expand on this if you want, Alex. The supernatural powers exist, but it's not innate to the humans, which you'll notice we didn't pick. There's no races or lineages or anything, right? It's everyone's basically a variant type of human, right? And so because it's not innate to humans, humans are mortal, the material, flesh and blood, and creatures just like the rest of the natural world. This means to wield the arcane abilities, humanity must harness strange powers of these creatures and the stuff in the world in a unique and various ways, which I think is really, really interesting. Because I think it comes with story and threats and dangers, right? What are some of your thoughts on this? For example, controlling a spirit energies of ghosts. Oops, I lost my thing.
I'll admit, I didn't dive into that one as much as I wanted to, just because I was trying to focus more on which aspects affected my character.
Right. And I understand that.
And the only playbook that was really affected by this really is the Whisper. Unless the GM brings these into play, which in our playthrough he did not.
Yeah.
Other than a few minor supernatural elements with some of the ammunition that Brandon chose here.
Well, some of our weren't some of our
magical items that too, yeah.
no, some of our crew's team members were like ghosts, weren't they?
Like they're like
Specters or something.
they're like rabbit spirits.
Which I think is
Oh yeah, that's
interesting.
right. The little NPCs we made.
Yeah.
So it does touch a little bit on the control of spiritual energies of ghosts with like pseudo-scientific techniques known as spectrology. So I'm getting total Ghostbuster vibes.
And it mentions like a hull is basically a construct body with a spirit implanted inside it too. So
So, from what I understand, from what I've read, and also from what I've watched, the supernatural things that happen in Blades in the Dark happen everywhere all the time. But it's kind of like, black market stuff with us, where, the average person knows that it exists, but it's not necessarily like ever been in front of us.
Right.
Whenever you go into the more seedy areas of town, that's kind of where these people are. And there are demons, there's vampires, there's werewolves, there's all these kinds of things. And there are hacks, which is something that I think that we should go over at the end of today's session of today's podcast, is that there are a lot of hacks, and actually some very popular hacks that I didn't know were hacks of Blades in the Dark. But there are some hacks that allow you to actually play these characters, and there is a way to play a previously dead character as a ghost. But it is supposed to be a ominous thing that is ever lurking in the background. Ooh la la. Like that kind of a mysterious thing where you know about it, but you don't know it. You don't. That's kind of how it's always been portrayed to me. And also, whenever I read about it and watch other YouTube videos and other people talk about it, that's kind of how it's always portrayed.
Right.
So like you may know a vampire, but you don't know you know a vampire. That kind of a thing.
And I do recall, I recall anyway, that playing as a vampire here is an option down the line, potentially.
Yes, I think there is a way to become a vampire, and there is a way to become a spirit, and there is a way to become a thief.
A hole? I believe?
Maybe.
So this brings up something interesting to me. Y'all familiar with
Go ahead.
Mysterio?
Yeah.
What if, because these strange anomalies are so normal, you could, in theory, play a character who exploits the unknown and creates like tricks and stuff to make people think that it's supernatural, when in actuality, it's just, some smoke powder that turns green or something.
Which is fun.
I do find it interesting that the supernatural element exists, and the wall around the city keeps the worst of it out. And they make it very clear, you leave the city, you're probably boned. Because of all that.
I get Casper vibes too. Like there's some ghosts that are friendly.
Yeah.
If I recall correctly, can't a whisper allow a spirit to possess? Actually, any character really can allow a spirit to possess them, You gain some of their skills and knowledge, but you run the risk of being possessed if you
And
fail your roles.
losing your character, right?
Yeah.
Ooh.
So that's pretty cool.
Oh my gosh.
Do you have anything to add to that, Brandon? About the supernatural stuff, way to get the most out of it?
No, but I did have an idea that would seem kind of neat in a way. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't actually work the way you'd want it to. But the city's run on Leviathan's blood, right?
Yeah.
What if the Leviathans start migrating?
They run out of
Which
juice.
would be
And they run out
a
of juice.
very, very fun thing.
And now you have the situation where everyone in the city knows they can find a nest, but now it becomes the ultimate heist between every single faction to get to it first.
Because if you don't, guess what happens? The barrier comes
The barrier
down,
comes
and
down,
everyone's
and
dead.
Everyone dies, yeah.
That's awesome. Like
So-
that would be a fantastic overarching
That's
campaign.
the best way to force everyone outside the city.
I do think it's interesting, though, that the book for the setting does say focus heavily, hyper on the city.
on the city.
Let me rephrase. City-state would probably be the more accurate term to
Because
use.
there's different ones, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I think there's a
Yeah,
map of
they
the
do
city too,
mention that
isn't there?
other cities do exist, and it does, of course, imply that various migrant groups exist too, because it did mention like growing up on ships, for example.
Mhm.
But they don't really touch on them, but they imply that there is a way to get there at the very least. But it's not necessarily
Yes.
a practical option to do on the fly either.
I believe that's what the Isles are. The
The Dagger Isles.
Dagger Isles.
Yeah.
I believe that's the people who are migrants.
Yeah, the travelers and stuff. So, what are we doing on time?
Yeah,
All right,
5.
so I think the last thing I want to touch on before we get into the hacks, because I think that this is super. This is where Blades in the Dark becomes very versatile, and can be restructured. But just to kind of summarize, when you're running it, make sure the supernatural stuff becomes part of it. Maybe
Yeah.
they're ghost travelers that are carrying messages back and forth, or stuff like that. There's wardings of vampires hanging from doors. You want to really fill in that supernatural and occult feel. I want to give a just kind of a brief history of Doskvol, just really quick, so you guys can kind of see. The city of Doskvol was established over 1,000 years ago as a coal mining settlement on the cold north coast of Akaros. It has withstood the breaking of the world and an attack by a titanic leviathan, massive fires, a plague, a civil war, and legions of angry ghosts. It is a community of survivors. So, in this world, all those things have happened and should direct and impact the way the NPCs and the characters interact with the world around them and each other. So, keep that in mind. So, do we want to delve into the hacks?
Yeah. So one of the things that is actually not only beloved by the community, but also sanctioned by the creators themselves and sanctioned by, I forgot what the name of the people are themselves, is
Evil Hat
hacking. Like
Productions.
Evil Hat Productions is hacking Blades in the Dark, which essentially means changing the setting, putting in a few things, taking out a few things, smooshing it around a little bit. The most famous hack is actually Scum and Villainy, which I did not know that was a hack of Blades in the Dark, so that's cool. It is sanctioned. It's on their official website. There's another official hack called Girl by Moonlight, which is actually a magic girl
Sailor Moon?
RPG.
Nice.
Yeah, like Sailor Moon. It's like a Sailor Moon RPG. I don't know how you would take. I'm so curious to play it. I don't know how you would take Blades in the Dark.
Evil by moonlight.
Moonlight.
Well, I don't know, considering how many times the main character seems to MacGuffin everything as she goes along, I could see that working out pretty well.
Oh, that's funny.
And then another one is Band of Blades, which I have also heard.
Yes.
The Legion is in retreat following a failed battle against the army of undead. You are a member of the Legion. Your bonds to one another are forged through the dark by bone and blood. And then a few others. And then the last one is Hack the Planet, which is a cyberpunk
Ooh.
Oh, that sounds cool.
Blades in the Dark. So those are the hacks that I can find off the top of my head. I know there's a Western hack I know that there's a Star Trek hack or a Star Wars hack. I haven't seen any of them, so it doesn't matter. But I haven't seen it's either Star Wars or Star Trek. And then there is a like sci-fi alien, you're on a spaceship in the middle of nowhere hack. And I mean, like, once you got Blades in the Dark down, you can play a lot of settings like this. It is very, very fun.
Kind of going off of that, I kind of wanted to touch on how in-depth the player's kit you can download for free off their website is. I mean, it effectively gives all the players the tools they need to play the game, to build their characters, to make a crew. Mm-hmm. And I could actually argue that enough of the rules are there that a DM could just make their own setting and just go off it. The material there.
They took a similar approach that 5e did by giving a lot of the SRD free, which gives you everything you need to do to functionally run the game, just not all the lore and story and world building. So
before we run out of time, I do want to touch on a few points that Alex did kind of mention in between recordings.
Okay.
Like, combat does exist in this game, but it's more of a, okay, here's the fight, roll for conclusion. It's not going to be a blow-by-blow combat simulator that you get from D&D, Pathfinder, and most other RPGs.
Does a 6 hit?
This is basically not going to be this kind of game. That doesn't mean there aren't any fights. I'm not saying you can't have that in mind, but this is first and foremost a narrative game. And everything's a lot more loose, for better or worse. And I say it like that because that's going to be a better fit for some players, for some DMs, than others.
Absolutely. It's very much on the rules light side of things.
Yep.
So,
and I can definitely see how, and I'll say just as much. If actually, I'm going to say, in an RPG like this, it's more important than ever for a GM to have the skills to improv on the spot. And I can also very much see where if a GM comes up with something on the spot, how that could potentially, given how loose the game is, it could burn the player in a way where a player might feel, well, that's not fair. But that can go both ways.
Definitely.
Yeah, kind of building off of that, my big con for this, like my big warning is if you need to have control of the game, do not play this. Do not DM this. Do not. It's literally it's almost all entirely improv. I mean, like, all what I did was I told, and how it's kind of structured is that you tell them the con that they're going to do, the heist they're going to pull off, and then they do all the prep themselves. They do all, and you just answer questions and vibe off of them, which is incredibly difficult as a game master if you have never done that before. It is like literally the opposite structure of Pathfinder or like 3.5. So if that is all, so if you want that kind of openness, do it. But if you're not comfortable with that, it's okay. You don't have to play it. I'm just saying, like, don't come into this expecting to have control over your players, because you just won't.
To double down on that, can you give a few examples from our play session where you had to come up with stuff on the spot from our actions?
Well, one of the things was you failing that roll. I expected you to succeed that roll, and I had everything planned for you to succeed that roll. When you failed it, and I was like, "Oh fuck, okay."
And I assume you mean when serving the security.
Yeah. So, and
in fact,
therefore, go ahead.
I actually expected to see it so well that when I failed, I'm like, I literally do not now know what to do, and I'm kind of frozen. And thankfully, Brandon stepped in and got things moving, but still.
Right. Yeah, but like, it's one of those moments where if the unexpected happens, you're gonna have to really think on your feet. So that was one of the places that was unexpected. Of course, Brandon just being like, "Hey, I'm gonna flashback and backstab Justin." That was also a point where I don't know how to say this to other DMs, but like, you know how normally it's like, "Hey, if you're gonna like backstab the party, can you like give me a heads up?" That doesn't exist in this game.
No,
like, it just happens.
The more I was thinking about it, the more I went away and thought about it, the more I was like, man, there was no way that Brandon could have told me that was his plan.
Yeah,
because I don't think
it would have affected everything.
Well, and he didn't know that was his plan until he decided to do it.
But that's the fun of the game.
I agree.
And it even mentions straight out. Actually, it dedicates an entire page basically to player versus player aspects of the game.
Yes, it's very pro PvPs, but I just wanted to say that my big con and my big warning sign is that if you're a more railroady, if you like structure in your thing,
it's my game.
It's my game. Yeah, if you're any of that thing, don't play this game.
Right. Yep. So, as we've kind of touched on the fact that it does require a little more experienced GMs to do well, there's actually some tips that we can provide with you if you are inexperienced to successfully run this and still come out being a champ. So
Yeah.
let's start simply. Ask establishing questions to set the stage for an action. So, for instance, who's leading the group? Is everyone rushing into the fight with this character, or is someone hanging back or doing something else? So a simple question like that, a character has said they're doing this, you're giving everyone an option to kind of join in or give you details of what they're doing differently. And, you know, do you want to focus on the big bad, and or do you want to try to do something else while that's going on, chase down this other person? Additionally, you want to ask provocative questions that make the players think and express their characters. So some really good examples might be, you know, what kind of person does he think you are now? Or are you going to just let her get away with that? Mm-hmm. Or can you bring yourself to hurt this person? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Ask leading questions and show the players that you're thinking, what you're thinking. Do you think she's the type of person who will respond well to threats? Or does anyone want to survey the room or study a particular NPC? So you're able to lead them into things that might be important and let them choose whether to do it. And ask trivial questions. This may sound trivial, but when the mood strikes, you know, you and you're curious, where do you usually go for dinner? What do you do when you're right after the bar? Where do you go? Do you have any little curios or personal items that you're hiding around the lair? And then, of course, ask the players for help. What's that?
I said Wendy's.
Yes.
And one other thing I want to touch on, too, before we close out, and I'm sure some of you can put two and two together on this earlier from our discussions, but one thing this book does very well, especially if you go with the base game, Blaze in the Dark, it sets up the setting itself very well. But because the rules itself are very loosey-goosey, they give broad guidelines, but they also reiterate some of the rules multiple times throughout the book, but often phrase it in different ways, and some people might remember different sections more than others that might cause some conflicts here and there.
Which is exactly what happened previously in a previous episode.
Right.
Which I will say, I remember there being an update to the rules in 2020 but he bought his book in 2021. Is it sitting on a shelf somewhere? You know, it's one of those things where it's like, so there might be books in circulation that are doing exactly what he's saying, and then other books that don't do that.
Okay. Well, the other thing, what I was saying, though, is we were both right. It just... But I even flipped back and forth between 2 pages. One page said one thing, one page said another thing.
I'd play devil's advocate and say you're both wrong.
Fuck you.
I want her on this one.
All right.
But you get what I'm saying, though.
Yep. Now here is our unearthed tips and tricks, system agnostic content for your tabletop RPG game. Today, for our encounter, we're going to be talking about the Shadows of the Evernight, the Moonstone Heist.
You don't say.
Now, I can't imagine why we would have picked such an encounter. I don't know if you guys have got a chance to look through this really good, but basically, the characters are hired by Kethro Blackthorn, a very wealthy merchant who wants to retrieve the Moonstone of Evernight from the vault of Lord Harridan Voltor, a powerful and corrupt nobleman who rules over the city of Ashenport, or whatever city you want. The Moonstone was stolen by Kethral's family many, many years ago, and he wants it back to restore his family's honor.
Dun, dun, dun.
So, all right, this scene is being set. What's going through your minds as players or as GMs for something like this with just this one short little paragraph?
Well, obviously a heist.
Man, few words.
I am always looking for chaotic neutral stuff because it's really easy to run something when everybody's good or everybody's good and one person's like just tagging along chaotic neutral. But whenever you got the whole party being neutral, like give me the muns, like I don't care about saving the world, it gets a little challenging. It's actually more challenging than you think it would be. And so of course I'm always looking for things that are like, hey, something that a chaotic neutral person would be inclined to do. So that's what I think with this one. Something that if you got that party that they don't want to save people, they just want to do shit and fight stuff. Like, that's what I think.
Okay, my usual rebuttal against the whole chaotic neutral person not wanting to save the world is, dude, of course I want to save the world. That's where I keep my stuff.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the people who are like, I don't care, give me money.
Right.
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that because it does start off saying that this was a treasure stolen already.
Yep.
So maybe what they're doing is for the good, right?
It could be.
Or at least that's what the player characters are told.
Yep.
Because I think this is where it gets fun, right? As we're talking, about heisting and stuff, I love the concept of this in general where the players are, hey, somebody stole something from my family. I want you to retrieve it. Unfortunately, Lord Valter's vault is located in Castle Valtor, a heavily guarded fortress on the outskirts of Ashenport. So the characters have to find a way to get inside undetected. Because if they don't, it's so heavily fortified that they're not coming out.
Maybe one of the reasons why the crier is being contacted is because they know an object is going to be moved from the vault, so therefore it's going to be opened. So therefore, here's a shot to get in there.
It's really great because actually the characters at this point through investigation learned something like that. Specifically, and at least in this example, he's going to be hosting a masquerade ball in his castle, and many a guests will be wearing masks and costumes, but he will also be showing off some of his treasures, right? Not dissimilar to what we ran with the auction.
Did you write this before?
Yes, I wrote this like a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
That's so funny.
I know, right? Anyways, so the players have to come up with a plan and to sneak in during the ball and get the item either in the vault or wherever it's located, and focusing on disguise and learning aspects. But I think what is most interesting about this opportunity is the more, and we did this in the Blades in the Dark, where you have to do prep. What if during the prep, maybe one of them learns that it was stolen, but it had been stolen before? Or perhaps maybe they find paperwork that says it wasn't related. Neither one of those people own it, that it actually belonged to this particular person, and it was lost during a move or something.
Or maybe it belonged to the Valtors in the first place. They just stole it back.
Yeah. I think that, but once again, that's really good because you start to get into this, what is right and what is wrong, and how much do the characters, care about it. Maybe they get a counter offer if they do get captured and say, hey, look, here's the truth. This is mine. This is where it came from. I think that a lot of that can make a heist far more interesting. Especially, what if they learn that Valtar is actually a really nice dude, and all the money he's raising at this masquerade is going to help all the local, homeless and feed them for, 3 months or something like that. Are they still going to want to steal from that?
Of course, you feed them by conscripting them into the town guard to act as the military during warfare. But hey.
What do you think, Alex?
I think that it's really fun. I love the play on morals. I always love the play on morals. I also always love giving the players like multiple options. Like, I don't know if people have noticed in the bounty boards on the Patreon, those are the ones that I write. I normally end up having to give like 3 or 4 different rewards, because it's like, if you give it to these people, you get this reward. If you give it to these people, you get this reward. If you give it to these,
Gotta pick and choose.
And so I love the play on the emotions, especially again whenever it comes to this chaotic neutral players, because like, ooh, how much do you really not want to do good? Like, are you willing to tip into evil? Like, are you willing to like like dip your toe into that.
Yeah.
As for the what I would do in this situation is I would actually make the moonstone stolen from an indigenous group of drow, since they worship the moon and stuff.
Moon and spider and stuff. Yep.
Yeah, so I would do it from an indigenous group of drow. I mean, I wouldn't make the drow evil or anything. I would
Right.
just be like, it was stolen from like somebody who doesn't have the power to get it back. So that's always the option to go give it back to those people.
I like that.
Although, of course, with drama, default reaction usually is they're evil because that's the stereotype. So maybe as a result, yes, it was taken from them, but the magic within the stone is so inherently evil, or can only be used towards those purposes. Like maybe we shouldn't have
Shouldn't
this
return
exist
this.
at all.
So,
Yeah.
Alex, you mentioned something. You actually kind of touch on both of what you said. The thing that I think is interesting, let's say it does belong to somebody else, and the characters find out that this Valtor did steal it because the people that owned it, whether they're drow or the I forgot the person's name already that was hiring them, but thanks. Kethril Blackthorn.
Yep.
Perhaps that it was stolen from them, but it was purchased through nefarious deeds. Maybe there was some dark ritual behind it, and the Valtor, fan or clan is maybe they're a bit of heroes that take away these powerful objects that in themselves may not be magical, but are used in powerful rituals. And turns out that the Blackthorn, was it Blackthorn? Forgot already.
Yeah.
The Blackthorn is actually like a cult family, right? And they use this thing to summon the Spider Queen or something that they had stolen from the drow or something like that. I always find that having layer upon layer of these quests and making them more interesting is just about how you connect what the stories of the locations, the people, and the objects more than just the overall mission. Because at its core, it's go in, get the item, come out, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But by taking the stories of each individual house and the object itself and its origins, creates a bit of, hopefully, conflict in the player characters.
And even then, getting through the whole process, though, you, of course, going in the vault, you try to find the vault, still a moon zone. Of course, as you said, or at least noted, they have to go through security systems in place, be it through, like, they be mechanical or magical traps, lockpicking, and so on and so forth, and deal with magical words, and then you have to fight your way out one way or another.
And I think that that's really good, especially, remember, we talked about it being expertly guarded, right?
Yeah.
So that also means anti-teleportation circles, maybe anti-magic circles, stuff that they would expect people to try to get.
Yep.
So,
ooh, the entire vault is one massive anti-magic circle.
So here's the question. I like that. I like that a lot. And I'd like to hear both of your guys' opinion. When a mage enters an anti-magic field, do they know it?
I would think so.
Whenever I actually had in another campaign, I had a vault that had an anti-magic field on the entire vault. And I did say, the way that I kind of described it was that the air felt stale and like it hadn't moved, like it had been sitting here for years. I kind of said that also all of the colors kind of dulled. Like there wasn't really any shiny, even though you were surrounded by gold, there wasn't any shiny. And that kind of clued them in that something was wrong. And then one of them made an arcana, and then one of them noticed that there was a script on the floor. And then they made an arcana check, and that was whenever. So I more
so
like
you alluded
clued
to
them
it, but
in.
didn't tell
Yeah.
them. I like that. It's a happy.
Maybe I guess it might depend on the system you're running this in too. But I guess an argument for a wizard may not necessarily know, but a sorcerer might, given that they have magic in their blood.
Yeah, it's tied to their like,
That's a good point.
or even you could go warlock too. That connection that drives them to that thin sliver of connection that they have through their pact.
That might be a better argument for a cleric, actually, because I feel like with a warlock, you're basically kind of like they already cut you the check and you cashed it. They just give you more checks as you level up, if you will.
I always thought that they were siphoning the powers from them.
Because generally,
Same here.
Because generally speaking, I think it was ruled that if you, let's say, cut ties from your patron, you still have your warlock abilities. You just don't gain more as you level up, or at least can't do that avenue anyway.
Absolutely. So, overall, do you think that this would be a kind of interesting adventure to run?
It can definitely be a springboard to go in different directions, and as we definitely touched on in this conversation, there's many ways you can run this.
Yeah.
There are options.
Yep.
I think my favorite thing about this campaign and about this like little one shot or like 3-shot idea is how many contacts a person can pick up.
Ooh. Especially at
Two,
the
all for each eye.
Masquerade Ball. Oh, God. The Masquerade's a great opportunity for them to, meet people but not know who they are.
I just imagine a bard being like, "Oh my god, is that? Oh my god, is that? Oh my god!" And so that's really what I like about this is just the amount of lore that you can dump, because lore dumps are just delicious, and then the amount of contacts and the amount of like tether points that can come off of this. Like, for example, one of the things that I originally think is that a guy named, after you do the heist and do the whole thing, a guy named Slick just approaches you in the woods. He's just this gnome in like a suit, right? And he just approaches you in the woods. And he's like, so either you do a thing for me or I go back to Voltor and tell him who did it with descriptions of all of you. And then it's like, what's your last name? It's like, my name's Slick.
That's all you need to know.
You know what I mean?
You
Like,
could even
I
give
just-
him, you said a gnome, right? So he has access to minor illusion, and he taunts him
Yeah.
even more by popping up a little hologram of each individual of each of them. And
Right,
I've got great
exactly.
detail. It's like a little sculpture. So what's the deal? And it
Exactly.
just makes it disappear. So
I've done stuff like that. It's fun.
yeah, I know. All right, I think that'll do it for our encounter of the podcast. Our Game Master tip today is information gathering. Now, arguably, this is one of the most difficult aspects to do well in most RPGs.
Right.
At least in a way that makes it fun, I think. It's important to remember that the flow of information between the game master and the players is extremely crucial to a successful game. Would you all agree?
Yeah.
Now, while you're naturally describe the world around, the players and their characters, you can't possibly cover everything. We know that. Unless it's a lore dump, which I know Alex is a big fan of, where you make sure they get every single clue. Did you guys take that down? Yeah, I only wrote about half of it. Rewind the video. It's 30 minutes. Anyways. That's where, that's why we have player characters' abilities, regardless of the RPG, is to help deliver that information. But we don't always remember to do that. I'm thinking like knowledge checks right out the bat, right?
Yep.
Like when my players are fighting a monster, I'm very happy to call for a knowledge check right out the gate for everyone as part of a free action.
Yep.
What do you know right now before it starts?
Sure.
Oh, Ian, you scored a 19 on this check for this giant Stegosaurus looking ability or thing or monster. You look over and Brandon's character says, "Yeah, I've seen this thing before with his 3. It's a Stegosaurus." Stomp, stomp, stomp. I actually believe that is
A Triceratops.
a Triceratops or a Basilisk, which is actually something that they got confused, and that was hilarious. So
Watch out for the Thagomazer.
So when a player wants to know something specific in the world, their character can gather the information if they can't gain it from a knowledge check, right?
Yep.
And so we have to develop strategies as game masters to constantly draw them into that situation of asking NPC questions, searching a library, scouting an area for any obvious clues. Just things that they have to actively do in order to acquire that information. Now,
And sometimes the players will come up with a way to come up with the information that you did not think of that's probably way better and probably makes everything easier for you.
yes, and when that happens, don't act surprised. You're like, I must have told you that before because that's really good.
Like the level 3 veteran extra expeditions,
Mm-hmm.
they had to meet up. They were basically given the general location of where the mercenary group was meeting up. And when the players at the countdowns app, it's like, well, we're in the bar. They're coming from all over. Is one of those members in here in the bar with us? Me. Oh, crap. That's a good idea. Roll if you see him. Yes, you do.
They're right over there in the corner. And that's a really good player initiative, right? And that's what I think Blades in the Dark really pushes force way more than some of the other RPGs I've played. Now, we can simply just answer their questions when they ask, but we should inform them if there should always be some sort of obstacle in the way for them to gather information, right? So if a player wants to know where a band of goblins is holed up, for instance, they might have to talk to a local shopkeeper who has heard rumors. Well, where did those rumors come from? Well, it turns out that he heard the rumors from a traveler who passed through 3 days ago. That's all he knows. So what do they got to do now?
Yeah, find the traveler.
Yeah, right? So as game masters, the information gathering has to be a step-by-step process and never just here's the answer based on a roll, because that's not as fun, right? So kind of I want to open the floor to discussion here now that I've said my piece, because I think that this core aspect of the game is something that most games lack. Combat is very well defined, but the exploration pillar and the lore pillar are much more shaky, as Ian just did with his hand, right? So, Alex, you've been very quiet because you're very patient. I appreciate it.
I think also building off of this kind of stuff, one of the things that's the most difficult is to not give your players all that information at once because you're really excited to give it to them, to allow them to figure it out and peel back the layers. And I definitely think that I definitely think it's way more satisfying whenever you onion this thing instead of whenever you just sometimes lore dumps are good, especially if it's like, all right, this NPC, well, like in I, they're gonna join the secret society. So on the way to the secret society, they lore dumped about the secret society and what the secret society is doing with the mind flayers, and that made total sense to me. But being able to peel back the information, like the thing that I kind of think about is like how you had to like really prompt Buntus to give you the information about him and who he is and how he's related to the lord of the giants and all that kind of stuff, and like about his like family and stuff. And I find that whenever information is player first, not DM first, and not like game first, it becomes a lot more fun. And also it extends your games in a way that is like more organic.
Yes.
So you don't have to randomly throw in things to make the session last 4 hours.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thought.
And I think that's a good approach. By the way, if you're not watching I, you need to head on over and watch Initiative Intrigue on. I think the older recordings are on our YouTube channel. So at what is that? YouTube.com/AlexBaum.
Yes.
So definitely go check that out.
Yep.
The other thing I kind of wanted to touch on, and I kind of did it briefly, is the opportunity to investigate is the opportunity to get it wrong.
Yes.
If they roll a 5 while they're looking through books in the a vast library, he says, "Hey, just so you guys know, I found this out about this wizard dude. Apparently he's a huge into fire magic, and I think we got to prep it."
But you did not find that clearly. It says when you put the key into to lock to the wizard's vault, you need to turn the key to the left, because if you turn to the right, it explodes.
It goes boom.
Fake news.
Absolutely. And it's not just about giving them wrong information, but wrong information that can be easily identified. Turns out that it's not that he's a master of fire, right? It's a weakness. So
or fragmented information.
Where it's only bits and pieces, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it turns out to be a weakness, so they're preparing to take all this fire damage and fight with ice, and they show up, and he's resistant to the ice. He doesn't do fire damage. He's vulnerable to fire. So I think that information gathering, whether it's fragmented, where it's just misleading entirely, if it's completely rumored, I think can impact the game in a very fun and engaging way.
Yep.
Whether it's a high roll or a low roll.
One of my favorite things that has ever happened at my table was that there was this really, really dumb barbarian, and he wanted to roll an investigation check in this library to try to find something. And I said instead, you didn't find what you were looking for because you got distracted. Then you found information about, I think it was knitting. And he literally made it part of his character. Like
I
he
love that.
started knitting on long rest. So
What do you
like,
do? I knit a
sometimes-
scarf.
I made a scarf. But like
You look cool, have
sometimes
some
wrong
booties.
information or like misdirecting your players ends up being some of the greatest role play. And then you randomly have a half orc who knits on long rest. And it's
I
like,
love
what are
it.
you
Or-
doing? And he's like, knitting.
Heh, now think about the meme. I thought you said we took 7d6 damage. No, I said you take 76 damage. Oh, that's way worse.
I think of being a Goliath and you sitting there doing this.
Or the guy who gives you the information has a very strong, very thick accent. So like many words he says are actually something else.
Mm-hmm.
I need you to go and investigate some dwarven runes. Wait, ruins or ruins? Runes!
Ruins.
Runes!
Ruined.
That's what I said. Ruins.
Right, runes!
Okay, we're on the same page. So, there's a lot of different ways to do this, but I think that regardless of how you approach it, you can use it for and against the players, right? Let's say you have an excellent scout who's great at, tracking. Maybe he finds tracks that lead exactly where the enemy wants him to set up an ambush. And so high checks can be just as dangerous as low checks when they're gathering information.
Yep.
But you want to make it fun. Encourage stealth to eavesdrop on conversations. Encourage, investigations to find pieces of information. A good one when sneaking into somewhere to, look through some merchants. What is the big books they got full of all their sales and stuff?
Oh,
Transcripts.
ledgers.
Ledgers, catalogs,
Ledgers.
ledgers,
Yeah.
whatever. And so that becomes the investigation themselves. Nothing to fight, nothing to stab, nothing to, all you have to do is get in and get out. But you stumble across in the middle of the night, you roll poopy, and the old butler is walking through and catches you, and looks and sees your giant sword or your big giant weapons. Just kind of looks and then shuts the doors and walks away. Even though it didn't go exactly as the players wanted, they learned what they wanted, and it still created a fun scene. So,
Although, inversely, I've seen way too many anime to know to mess with the butler.
I don't know. I just one of my favorite scenes in the
Batman?
the Batman, right? The guys the
a
thugs are walking down the halls and they open the door and Batman just looks at him. The guy just closes the door and he says, "Look, how's it going there?" "Nope, nothing in there." He just keeps on walking. It's the only one to ever survive. All right, I think finally, it's worth noting that some questions might be too complex to answer immediately, so you can stretch those out over downtime days, weeks, whatever, right? You don't want it all. It doesn't all have to be, let's go gather all the information we need to slay the big bad. What do you know? That library had everything we needed, and we found it in this big library right away. So make sure you take advantage of that. It also gives you an opportunity to add downtime to the story. And kind of experiment with adding like festivals and things that might go on while they're gathering information.
I've actually done something like that, where they went to a library to find a book with a bunch of information on what had happened in the past, to figure out where
A history
something,
book?
something on history book, yeah, and everything they needed was torn out,
Oh,
so they had to go on
shit.
adventures to find the pages throughout the city.
That is awesome. I love it.
That was an Assassin's Creed issue.
Huh? What if the book is checked out? Oh, yes, I'm sure we have it. The little butler's ushering you through. It should be, right? Oh, my. It appears we did not update our catalog when somebody checked out this book. Let me see if I can find the notes of who may have it. Oh, it turns out a sailor took it on his trip. Good luck finding that shit.
It's on the other side of the planet now.
All right, that'll do it for our Game Master tip, information gathering. That'll do it for our show. Hopefully you enjoyed this mini series covering Blades in the Dark. I know that we absolutely had a blast.
Play it.
Yes, play it.
Yep.
I want to play it again. Brandon, would you play again?
I would absolutely play again. I would
Well-
really like to test out the whole macro part of it.
Yeah.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully you were able to get up some good tips for whatever RPG you're playing. And hopefully you will join us in 2 weeks when we discuss Monster of the Week. I'm super excited for this. One of the I&I players, our Initiative and Intrigue players, Jack, had basically spewed about how great it is one time, and I've been obsessed with it ever since. Because I'm pretty sure I bought it when he said that, and it's just been sitting in a download ever since.
Wait, it's
so
a game?
why wouldn't it be a game?
Because we used to have a Monster of the Week. So I thought, we're bringing back Monster.
That's
Weekly
Monster
Monsters?
variants.
Oh.
No, that's from the old show. I see what you say.
Alright.
No.
No, that's a game we will be covering. So,
Okay.
I think overall, what a great episode. Hopefully you'll, if you enjoy the show and you want to support us, please visit Crit Academy, follow us on social media, leave us a review. In all honesty, it really does help if you guys share our content onto your platform, social media like Facebook, Twitter, our TikTok, share those. Or if you really want to go to the next level, share our show in your favorite Discord groups or Facebook groups and all those places where you go for RPG guidance and inspiration. So that'll do it for our show today. I'm your host, Justin.
I'm your co-host, Ian.
I'm your co-host, Alex.
And I'm your co-host, Brandon. Thanks for listening.
Have your fun.
Thank you.
Have fun on your adventures and
Don't be a dick.
Don't be a dick. Nice, Justin.
I tried.
Yep.